Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Kalamazoo, you fired up? That's what I like to hear. So can we just give one more huge round of applause for our union leaders, Danielle and Ryan? So I just want to know who I'm speaking to today. Let me just ask a couple questions. Who here believes in people over profit? Let me hear you. And who believes in a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, not of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations? And who here knows that when we fight, we win? I must be in Kalamazoo then, huh? That's right. I am Abdul Sayyid. People know me as Abdul. And I know, I've got a perfect name for U.S. politics. My name might be different, but so are my ideas. And so is the vision, because I'm focused on people. Let me say that again. My name might be different, but so is our vision, because we are focused on the people. And that's why we're here with a certain Senator Bernie Sanders. He knows, he understands that we need more people willing to stand up to power without fear. Different name, different kind of leader. Now look, my dad, Muhammad, he took a bet on a country, this country, back in 1978. He took a bet on an America where it shouldn't matter what your name is, or how you pray, or if you pray at all, or where your folks come from, or who you love, or how you identify. He took a bet on an America that is big enough for all of us. And I was raised by my father, Muhammad, and my stepmom, Jackie, a daughter of the American Revolution, from about an hour away from here, in the very heart of Michigan, Gratiot County. The thing they shared in common, a love of science and engineering, and using their skills to help people. Growing up in that home, I knew from a pretty young age that I probably wasn't going to be anybody's engineer. I wanted to be a doctor. And let me explain why. See, on late summer days like this, I'd often find myself in a cottage on a lake in the heart of Michigan. But that was after spending so much of my summer in Egypt. As a teenager, I'd get shipped off to Alexandria, where my father was raised in a one-bedroom apartment just a stone's throw from a fish market where his father sold vegetables. His mother, my Teta Suad, was the wisest, most intelligent person I have ever met. But she never got to go to school. She raised 6 kids in a one-bedroom apartment of 8 to whom she gave birth. 2 of them passed before their first birthdays. They were an aunt and uncle I never got to meet, siblings my father lost before he turned 5. I'd spent most of my time in Egypt with my Teta Suad, and though she never got to go to school, hers was the school of life, where she learned about the moral lessons that even the most studied folks too often fail to learn. You can imagine me walking into that apartment, my hat backwards with my American kid swagger, and she's sitting me down. Habibi, right here. You can imagine her, points to one of my cousins, that one is smarter than you. Points to the next one, I don't have to tell you, is taller and better looking. Points to a third one, nicer, kinder hearted. 4th one's more athletic. 5th one works harder than you do. By the end of it, I'm like a puddle on the floor with a hat. By the end of this, I'm like, Teta, what do I have going for me? She's like, Habib, you have the best thing of all. I was like, what's that? You get to go back to America at the end of the summer. She was teaching me about opportunity. You can imagine, with that name, people like to question my love for this country. But trust me, no one loves their country like a kid who saw what his life might have been without it. So make no mistake, I love America. I know exactly what America gave me. I got vaccinated against diseases that killed my aunt and uncle. Incredible public schools. I'm a Michigan kid, football captain, lacrosse at U of M. I even got my med school paid for by a public agency at the NIH. But I love America enough to call her to be better. On those summer trips, it'd take me 15 hours to get to Egypt. And in those 15 hours, I would travel about 10 years difference in life expectancy. But I didn't have to go 15 hours to travel that gap. I could go just 15 minutes from where I grew up in Oakland County, and I could travel the same 10-year life expectancy gap. And here's the thing. I could never explain why kids growing up just a short car ride from me, whose families had been here far longer than mine, never got those same opportunities. I became a doctor to help people. Doctors ask two questions. What's wrong and how can I help? What's wrong? Big corporations making money off illness. Our systems puts profits over people. I learned pretty early in my med school career that the answers to what was wrong had a lot less to do with all that physiology I spent all that time studying, and a lot more to do with pathologies in our politics. Do you get to breathe clean air? Do you get to drink clean water? Do you get to walk in your local community without being victimized by a neighbor or the state itself? Can you afford the groceries that have the micronutrients that will grow your brain, or just the ones that have the macronutrients that grow a belly? Can you even see a doctor in the first place without having to worry about falling into medical debt? And as I kept reflecting on these facts, I realized that my work had to be back outside a clinic and a hospital, so I followed it back out. I've worked to heal our broken system. When politicians broke Detroit's health department, I rebuilt it. They had shut down a 185-year-old health department in a city with a higher infant mortality rate than my father's native Egypt. A city where our children face threefold the probability of asthma hospitalizations and fourfold the probability of lead exposure. Shut it down. I was hired to rebuild it and rebuild it around the well-being of kids. We realized that 30% of our kids who tested positive for vision deficits would come back testing positive again next year, meaning we knew they needed glasses and we didn't get them a pair of glasses. So we put optometrists on vans at schools so that when kids got tested, they got their full exam and we could ship them a free pair of glasses within 2 weeks. That program that we brought to the city of Detroit for the first time has since delivered 50,000 pairs of glasses across the state. And I'm never going to forget the first moment I heard about what was happening in Flint. And the immediate thing I kept thinking was that our schools and the state of our schools might mean that our kids could be exposed to the same lead we were hearing about in Flint in the place where we systematically concentrate them most of the day, most of the year. And so we had every school, daycare, and Head Start tested for lead in the water. The first 68 schools we tested, 19 of them tested positive for lead. So we got them on the path to being lead-free. And I got to work with folks like Dr. Mona, who broke the Flint water crisis, to help rewrite lead policy for our state. When a Marathon petroleum refinery, the biggest polluter and the most polluted zip code in the entire state, wanted to raise their emissions, despite the fact that the EPA had said that there was already too much sulfur dioxide in the air, we organized. We stood up. And collectively, with the local community, we forced them to invest $10 million of their own money to reduce their emissions when they had initially applied to increase them. When kids needed glasses, we got them glasses, took on lead, made government work for people. I went on to run Wayne County's health department. We innovated, and we got to work. No family should have to go bankrupt over medical debt. In fact, medical debt shouldn't exist. So we erased it, up to $700 million for 300,000 people. When people were dying, we got Narcan onto our streets to save lives. We put free Narcan in 100 places. We took on big insurance and helped people. We did it because it was right. That's because I was taught that way. That's what I do. It's what I've done everywhere I've gone. I'm a doctor. I know how to diagnose a problem, and I know how to cure it. When I see something hurting Michiganders, hurting us, I'm going to work to fix it. Now look, I know I'm running for U.S. Senate, but I've been to the U.S. Senate before. And the last time I went to the Senate, it was to testify about the work that we were doing in Wayne County under the summons of one, Senator Bernie Sanders. Now look, I loved that job in Wayne County. I really did. And when I think about the kind of work that my teta would have been proud of, I think about that kind of work. But I'm never going to forget that day back in January. It was what, 8 months ago? Feels like 8 years ago now. I'm sitting in my office. I get a notification that the Trump administration has just frozen all federal funds. So I'm looking at line items in my budget that are frozen. The WIC program, food on the table for moms and babies, frozen. Federally qualified health centers, the last line of healthcare defense for people who don't otherwise have it, frozen. Vaccines, frozen. And just then, I get a push notification to my phone that after a long and storied career, our U.S. Senator Gary Peters is calling it a day. He's not running for re-election. And at that point, I had to ask myself, where is the fight now? Where does this fight go? And I realized that this fight had to go to the U.S. Senate. Kalamazoo, I'm going to tell you what you all already know, that in the history of our country, there has never been a president who is more dangerous than this one. He cheats, he steals, he's openly using his office to enrich his own family. Worse is how he lies to people, exploiting their pain for political win. Take, for example, that big ugly bill. He's gutting Medicaid, a move that'll destroy hospitals in local, rural, and urban communities alike, robbing millions of their health care. Why? To pass a tax cut for billionaires. And he's forcing our children and our children's children to pay for it in the form of $3.5 trillion expansion of the federal debt. And there's the way he's letting RFK Jr. run amok on the federal public health agencies. Yo, in case it's not obvious, you probably shouldn't put a guy who goes swimming in Schitt's Creek over the nation's health. You know, what they never tell you is how he got that brainworm. Here's the thing that gets me most about RFK Jr. I actually agree on a lot of the problems. I really do. Pharma is a problem. I agree. Our food system is dominated by big corporations selling us chemicals as food. I agree. Healthcare should be more affordable. I agree. But the thing about RFK Jr. is that he lies about the solutions. Vaccines are good, actually. And even though though he gets some of the problems right, he's too much a coward to actually take on the corporations who created them. Don't bring me a handshake deal with pharma to bring drug prices down as some kind of victory while you abolish billions in critical research that could have helped us discover cures to different cancers. Don't just ban red dye when you know the biggest issue with our food is the lobbying of huge megacorporations. And don't tell me you're going to bring down the price of our health care when you haven't said the three most obvious words: Medicare for all. Nope. And then there's Liberation Day. I think we're like on the third version of this by now. Look, I want to be clear with you all. NAFTA was a cancer on the American economy. And I happen to think that tariffs can be helpful. Kind of like chemotherapy for cancer, but not like this. All right? Any doctor will tell you that you've got to be pretty careful with chemo. Too much at the wrong times and you'll kill the patient that you say you're trying to save. But like all things Donald Trump, his tariffs are chaotic, ham-fisted, and self-serving. Trump is not serious about protecting American manufacturing. He's serious about using us. Trump only cares about CEOs who will bend the knee for sweetheart deals while the rest of us suffer through the inflation he's making worse. So look, we've got to stand up to Donald Trump. And I'll tell you this. As a kid named Abdul, you can imagine I've met my fair share of bullies. And you can go ask them how that went. I got receipts, y'all. So, too many Democrats tell you they're fighting only to show up with a strongly worded letter. We need Democrats who have the courage to stand up to the power brokers in our own party, let alone Trump and his goons. We don't back down. We don't back down. We don't back down. With all due respect, if they go low, we don't go high. We take them to the mud and choke them out. But look, we've got to be fearless, taking on the corporations and billionaires and oligarchs without standing down, without giving an inch. It's about doing what's right every time, because we work for the people. I've been at this now for about 10 years, and I've taken on big corporations, big insurance, big pharma, big everything. And I've even taken on our own party when they're wrong. Now, the billionaires will lie to us, and they'll lie about us. Let me say that again. The billionaires will lie about us to try and stop us, but it won't work. They attack anyone who wants to take on the powerful. They attack anyone who wants to fight for the people. They attack anyone who wants to change anything. Just ask Bernie. But we can stand up to their attacks together and take on the oligarchy.